Influence Church exists to help you know God, find freedom, discover purpose, and influence your world.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Influence Podcast with Katalin and Kelly. And just to make it clear, I am Katalin.
And I'm Kelly. We're so glad that you're here with us today. It is New Year's Eve.
December 31st, 2023. Another year went by.
Yes. For me, this is how it went. January, February, March, December.
I thought you are going to mention each month.
It just feels like it went super fast, but I am really excited for this coming year. And so this is kind of a transition podcast, right? We're finishing out 2023 and looking ahead to what 2024 is going to bring. So for this episode, we are going to be talking about putting first things first. Why did we pick this topic?
Well, we live in a time when prioritizing things in our life is a necessity and not a luxury anymore. We have so many things competing for our attention, our time, our resources, that we have to be wise, we have to be intentional and ready to know how to prioritize, to know how to put first things first. Many people make New Year resolutions to find themselves 2 months later forgetting about them. I know that because I was one of them. And by the way, last year, 63% of people surveyed, they said that they didn't even make a New Year resolution. And in my opinion, it's because people failed so many times, then they just didn't even bother anymore to make New Year resolution. This year, me personal, I decided to take a different approach. I am going to delay making a New Year resolution. And you might ask yourself why? Because we as a church every January do this 21 days of prayer and fasting where we are just going deeper and seeking God more. And then this year I realized that I want to discover and find out from God exactly what plans He has for me. And then if I will align my desire and my goal and my vision for this year, 2024, with God's plan and God's vision, is going to have a much, much higher chances to be fulfilled than if I'll just come up with something that might not even be in God's plan.
Mm-hmm. That's good. When I think of putting first things first and priorities, I think of the story of a college professor that did a little visual in his class one day. He brought in a big glass jar, and first he put these big rocks in and filled it up with rocks. And then he said, "Is this jar full?" And some students said, "Yeah, you can't fit anything else in there." Some said, "I don't know." Well, then he brought in some pebbles and he poured pebbles in, and they kind of went through and filled in spaces that the rocks didn't fill. And then he said, "Is this full now?" And some were like, "No, I don't know. It looks full." And then he brought sand and he poured sand in and kind of shook it. And the sand, he got a lot of sand in, and he said, "Is it full now?" And some people were like, "Yeah, for sure it's full now." Well, then he brought water and he poured water in until everything was like, it really was full. He said, "Okay, what is the lesson from this?" And some of the students said that the lesson that they thought it was there's always room for more. And the professor's like, "No, that is not it. The lesson is you have to put the big rocks in first, or you wouldn't have been able to get all of this in." And so today we're kind of going to be looking about the big rocks. What are the priorities in our life? And we want to look about 3 areas in which we might struggle with priorities. And those are our heart, our time, and our resources. So let's start with looking at our heart. What do we mean by our heart? When I think of the heart, I think about our passions, our desires, our values. What do you think about when we talk about heart?
I think you have a good point about the highlights, what heart means. In our hearts, we have only one heart, right? And,
I do.
And everyone wants a small piece of it. The question is, who will win? And in my opinion, the winner of our heart to have a successful life needs to be God. When Jesus was teaching his disciples about the right priorities in the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 6, he said this, "But seek first his kingdom and his righteousness, and all these things, all the other blessings, materials, financial, health, and so on, and all these things will be given to you as well." But the priority is very important. That's what Jesus is saying. If we give God our heart, if he wins our heart, we will be blessed beyond our imagination. I'm not saying that we'll have an easy life. I'm not saying you are going to win the lottery, you'll not ever get cold or sickness and everything is going to be amazing. What I'm saying is we'll have a better life, not just an easy life, because now we'll discover the purpose that God has for us, and when we live in that purpose, then we feel fulfilled.
So we want to put the God rock in first. And so let's look at some other scenarios. So what if you're married?
Well, glad that you asked that. In my opinion, the order for a family, for a married family, is that still God is first, spouse is second, and the kids get the leftovers. I mean, they are the third.
No.
And the third. But if we keep God first, he encourages us to honor and to love our spouse, to support, to encourage our spouse. So if we put God first, he's going to tell us like, hey, pay attention to your spouse.
Yeah.
So it's like putting your spouse first also. Mm-hmm. And I know once what you add kids, it's getting even harder to keep this priority or order right. And it is harder because the kids depends on us adults, especially when they are little. And they can sure suck out a lot of energy from us.
They take a lot.
They take a lot.
Don't be offended, kids. But you do.
And we still love them.
We do.
Don't get me wrong.
They have my. Yeah.
But it can feel like we have nothing to give anymore because the kids take everything. And if we are not intentional in keeping the order right and still think about our spouse, can add a lot of tension in our marriage, because when the order is not right, something is not right. And then a lot of wrong things go wrong.
I kind of think like you put God in first, and like you said, then he's going to tell you and empower you to love your spouse. And then together you're a unified front to love and care and train your kids.
For this reason, I think it's very important to pay attention to how much actually the kids suck out of us, and how much do you still have to give to our spouse. Also, it's very important when sometimes the kids will play parents against each other.
Never.
Right? So not just kids playing against us against each other, but we have a story that one of our kids, when they were little, were really scared at night. They went through a few nights that they couldn't sleep in their room. And he came to our room. Mm-hmm. And the first night, okay, you are scared. Maybe he had a bad nightmare or something, bad dream. So we said like, okay, you can sleep here with us. And I remember him sleeping in our bed with us, and I was sleeping like toothpicks, because the kids take a lot of space in the bed. And then the first night I couldn't sleep at all, but the kids slept, had no problem. And then the second night happened exactly the same. I'm like, well, I'm not gonna go through a second night of not sleeping. So we decided to just put a blanket on the floor, and he brought his pillow, and he slept next to us, and everything was okay. Well, the third night came back with the blanket and the pillow, like already that's his room, that's his bedroom. And like, no, this is not gonna work like that, because we still wanted the bedroom to be our bedroom.
Yeah.
So then I remember saying like, okay, this is not gonna work. So you are scared in your bedroom, which shouldn't happen because we have a very safe house. We are protected by God. So then I flip everything. I was like, okay, you go sleep in your bed. And actually for a few nights in a row, I slept on the floor in his room to just show him that that is his bedroom and he should not be afraid of anything in his bedroom. And then, sometimes I will stay there all night, or sometimes I will be there until he falls asleep and then slowly go out. And
I did not sleep on the floor.
no,
Not going to happen.
But in this situation, I want to just highlight that we wanted to be sure our space is our space and not the kids.
Yeah. I want to talk to those who are single for just a second, because it can be a hard thing when you're talking about your heart, because some who are single just really have a longing to be married. And whether you've never been married, whether you might be widowed or divorced, singleness can still be a really beautiful thing. And as when we put God first in our hearts, because there's a lot of things that a single person can do that you just don't have the freedom, the time, the ability to do when you're married, or especially when you have young kids. And so I just want to encourage anybody who's single to just put that God rock in first and let him tell you who you are in your singleness, because you are beautiful and full and complete in him, not because of your relationship status. I just want to just shout that truth out right now. There is a great deal of freedom that comes from singleness.
And are a lot of single people in the Bible that we can see how God used them and fulfill God's plan for their life, like Jeremiah and Nehemiah in the Old Testament. Ruth, she got married, but she experienced a singleness.
But during her singleness, she really cared for Naomi, and so awesome.
she discovered the purpose that she had during that time.
Yeah.
Whether single, married, parent or not, it is so safe to give God our heart, or priority in our heart. He is worthy of it, and he will take care of our heart. I don't know anyone else better than trusting with our heart than God.
Yeah. Through hard times, like I can't imagine going through the really hard times of life without having my heart in God's hands, because that's when that peace that passes all understanding can come. And that's when we need him holding our hearts the most. And so I think it's so important. So, what does it look like to put God first in our heart? I think that as we're going through our next two areas, a lot of that question will be answered as we talk about how to put first things first in our time, and also how to put first things first in our resources. So let's talk about time.
So the second area is time. And time is something that once we lost it, you will never be able to regain it.
Like water flowing down a river.
For this reason, I think it's important to pay attention to our calendar. There are so many Bible verses in the Bible about time. Psalm 90, verse 12 said, "So teach us to number our days, that we may get a heart of wisdom."
Oh, there it connects back to the heart again.
So the time and the heart, we can see it right here. My favorite verse about time is found in Ephesians chapter 5, 15, and 16, and I would like to just read it from Amplified Version. Therefore, see that you walk carefully, which that means living with honor, purpose, and courage, shunning those who tolerate and enable evil, not as unwise, but as wise, sensible, intelligent, discerning people, and making the very most of your time. Making the very most of your time and on earth, recognizing and taking advantage of each opportunity and using it with wisdom and diligence, because the days are filled with evil. So we can see how important it is, and Apostle Paul is writing to the church of Ephesus about how important it is to pay attention and be diligent in our time. The Bible, as I said, has a lot to say, a lot of Bible verses about time. People who put first things first focus on the important, not just the urgent. Act on priorities, they plan weekly and act daily. When you are putting first things first, when you organize your time around the most important things and eliminate the unimportant, you fulfill what God is calling you to do, because you are intentional spending your time. So the question that we should ask ourselves is, what is the most important to us? Is our career, our car, our jobs, our look, how people sees us? What is the most important to us? Then start there.
And we're going to stop there for just a moment. We'll be right back. Welcome back. I hope that break was helpful to you. We're back to talking about time. And now it is time to get super practical. So my secret weapon is my planner and my calendar. Cataline, you sometimes say to me, I'm going to do this, or I'm going to meet with so-and-so. And I always say, did you look at the calendar? Because we try to we have a family calendar, Google Calendar, that we try to put everything on. So, and I use this planner.
I got in trouble a lot of time.
Yeah, he does.
Because I messed up her calendar.
Yeah. It's not my fault. He didn't check the calendar.
True.
So then my planner, I have a spot for weekly top 3 of those are my priorities for that week, and then a daily top 3. And so if I even only get 3 things done in a day, if they're those 3, I feel good about my day, because the list is never going to end ever. And so then I feel empowered to accomplish what will help me the most to get towards my goals. And your calendar, your planner should reflect your values and your goals. And so let's say you want to learn Spanish, for example, which I kind of want to learn, but I'm not sure. But maybe y'all can help me. Your calendar should reflect that you're taking lessons once a week, you're practicing 30 minutes a day, you do what things are going to schedule your time for to accomplish that goal. Because a goal without a plan is just a dream. And it's important that our schedule matches those values.
And you are really good at coming up with resources to try to figure out our family calendar, right? Or when to have family dinner.
Oh, yeah. So that's one example of how we schedule our values. Is family dinner is super important to me. But as the kids are getting older, they have jobs and they're like busy people. And so every week I go through and do meal planning, and I write down the days of the week. Then I look on the calendar for what boys are working what nights, and I see, all right, this night we can do family dinner. And I make sure that at least one night out of the week we are sitting down together as a family having dinner, because it's really important and I really enjoy it. And I also make sure that I cook something everybody likes on that night. And then I post my dinner plan in our family group me, and also on the refrigerator, and because the boys like to know what they're eating as well.
And it's so useful because it's giving us a purpose to somewhere to look at it, to our family schedule and family time, and made us more intentional. Like, okay, on that night, because of schedule and conflict, I should not plan anything else because it's family dinner.
Right. And then we're showing our kids that we value that.
Yes.
Because what you value, you spend time on. So what are your other thoughts about time?
For me, since I was a teenager, I wanted to say what Joshua said. I kind of stuck with me this Bible verse in the middle of Joshua's time. He said this. He was talking with all the God's people, and he said, like, as for you, decide who you want to serve. But as for me and my family, we will serve the Lord. Mm-hmm. And this is something that really stuck with me. So since I was a teenager, I allocated time for God. Actually, even before that, I've been raised by my grandma and grandpa for when I was a kid. And I remember grandma, every night she will not go to bed without praying. So she will kneel at the end of the bed and she will pray. And then I started doing that with her when I was probably 4 or 5 years old. And probably for this reason, I love prayer time, not just because I used to do it with grandma, but because I saw prayer answered that we pray. Today, I have a ritual about time, allocating time and give portion of my time to God. I have a ritual, if you want to call it ritual, not necessarily. I know sometimes can be seen as a negative word when you talk about the ritual. But almost every morning, I start my day with listening to worship, reading God's word, praying, saying, and it depends. Sometimes it's 10, 15, 20 minutes. Sometimes can be a half hour. And sometimes I'm done in 3-4 minutes. So it's not like a specific amount of time. And also after I do, I like to start my day with God. But also before I'll go through my day, I read kind of the news headlines. Like, I want to start with God, but also I want to know what's happening in the world. And actually, starting in 2024, January 1st, next year, I'm going to add something to my ritual, if you want to call it. And that is, I'm going to start looking in every morning to my calendar, what's happening for that day. Ooh, I know. Nice. She's been after me for years to use a planner. And when it's her idea, it doesn't click. But when it becomes my idea...
Yeah, when I give up, I literally gave up honey. And I was like, whatever, he is in charge of him. And then he comes like it's his great idea. I'm going to use a planner this year. We'll just see. Pray for him.
Pray for me.
How it goes.
Pray for me. And now I guess you guys can keep me accountable. Ask me every time Sunday morning in church, like, how is your planner going? I used to say it's all in my head, but it's so much in my head that it's a mess.
It is a mess in there.
So sometimes I will walk from the office to the kitchen to pick up something and I will forget what I went to pick up. Just because I start thinking about what was in the garage or what is in the car, what I have to do at Sam's Club, and it's just a mess. So then she's right. If I will write down what I'm supposed to do in that day and start with that, then I know I will accomplish those for sure. And if I will accomplish more than that, then it's a benefit. It's a plus.
Yeah. Awesome.
So I do need to get more organized. And for this reason, I'm going to start using a planner. Oh.
Uh-oh.
I went away.
There you go.
Something else I'm doing about my time or giving my time to God, putting God first in my time, is that I pray every evening before I go to sleep. I learned that if I do not start my day with God, and if I don't end my day with God, I start growing more worried, full of anxiety, even having nightmares, and going 2, 3, 5, 6 days without doing this kind of ritual. I'm like, man, something is wrong. Something is not right. And then I realize, oh, I went astray from my real time with God in the morning and in the evening. So honoring God with our time, it's beneficial to us and to our family. Honoring God with our time can be starting our day with Him, ending our day with Him, but also something like maybe being part of a small group. Maybe going Sunday morning to church, or maybe serving other nonprofit organization ministries, or other serving at church, and giving our time to God, putting God first in our calendar, in our time, to expand His kingdom or advance His kingdom. When we use our God-given gifts to serve one another, to be God's hands and feet on this planet, we fulfill God's purpose for our life. And we are going to feel more accomplishing what God is calling us to do.
And that really leads into our third area we want to talk about, which is putting first things first with our resources. So many people think when we talk resources that it's just talking about finances or money, but when we're talking about that, it's so much more than just a dollar sign. So why does God ask us to put Him first in our resources, and what does that mean?
And putting God first in our resources, and I want just to take us kind of derail a little here. I know we as a church, and not necessarily Influence Church, but as a church, worldwide church, made little about disservice to people, because sometimes we are so focused about convincing people to tithe or give their money to church that we forget the purpose that God put this together or had this request. If you look through the Bible, you'll see that God established the principle of tithing as a way of helping us to lean more on Him than on ourselves. Because when we take 10% from what we have and give it to God, we have less. Let's be honest. We have 90%, right? But
it's math.
Yeah, I love math. So for all of you, if you take 100% of, I'm just kidding. Moving on. If we have 90%, it's technically less that we have for us. But 90% blessed by God, it's proving us to be much more than 100% without God's blessing. And for this reason, it's showing us not just we show God that we trust Him by giving Him our tithing, but it's just us leaning more on God.
Yeah, it's about trust, really.
And the principle of putting God first with our resources is going beyond just writing a check. Because if you look in the Bible, in the Old Testament, Israel was required to bring 10% of what they were having or growing or doing. So if they were farmers, they were taking 10% of the crop and they were taking to the temple. If they were shepherds, they were taking 10% of the lambs and they will take them to the temple. If they were making furniture and sell it, they will take 10% of the profit and take it to the temple. So they were allocating 10% of what they were doing, of what they were good at. And of course the church needs finances, but also church needs people to use their God-given gifts.
Yeah.
I love how Pastor Chris Hodges, it's one of our mentors, it's helping us understand this principle by saying this: we do not want something from people, We want something for people. When we use God-given gifts to help others, we feel fulfilled, like a right tool used for the right purpose. It's just making sense. When we start using our God-given gifts, we feel fulfilled because we discover why God put us on earth. And we feel blessed because now we get to be a blessing to others. Yeah. So let's say you are a good administrator or being an administrator. Well, you can take some of your time to just be an administrator in church or in other nonprofit organization or in other ministry to advance God's kingdom. Let's say maybe you are good with kids ministry, right? Maybe you are good at kids. Maybe you can take 10% of your time and it's like, okay, I'm going to help with iKids at Influence Church, or teaching Sunday school, or being in the littles with our little kids. And to be honest with you, sometimes I prefer being there than being in the auditorium.
They are great.
Awesome. We have awesome kids. Yeah. So maybe you are gifted at organizing events or listening to people, counseling. Maybe you are gifted at mentoring and serving others or serving coffee, praying for people. Whatever it is, try to use that, what you have, for the glory of God. And that is putting God first with our resources.
Yeah.
Don't always think that it's about a dollar sign.
Yeah, it's both and.
It's yes.
Both and, because we've practiced tithing in our lives, like from before we were married.
Right.
I was taught as a child, you get a $5 allowance and you're giving 50 cents to the church. And my family did that and they were blessed, and I've done that and we've been so blessed. So this isn't like, oh, the pastor's telling you to tithe again. No, these are principles that we have lived.
We practice and we see the rewards.
And so it works for us. So anyhow, when we're talking about resources and gifts and using our gifts for God's glory, I think of Romans 12, verses 4-8. Just as our bodies have many parts and each part has a special function, so it is with Christ's body. We are many parts of one body, and we all belong to each other. In His grace, God has given us different gifts for doing certain things well. So if God has given you the ability to prophesy, speak out with as much faith as God has given you. If your gift is serving others, serve them well. If you are a teacher, teach well. If your gift is to encourage others, be encouraging. If it is giving, give generously. If God has given you leadership ability, take the responsibility seriously. And if you have a gift for showing kindness to others, do it gladly. I love those verses.
Such a perfect verse to express how we can put God first in our resources.
Yeah. And at Influence Church, it's super important to us to help you discover your gifts and purpose. And so on January 14th, we'll take a little break for an announcement. January 14th, we're going to be having Influence Culture Part 2, which is called Discover Your Purpose. And we look at personality, we look at spiritual gifts, we look at experience, we look at your passions, and we help you to pinpoint some of the areas where God has gifted you, and that we can help connect you to areas where you can start using those gifts, living out that purpose right at church. So sign up on the Church Center or influence.church for that Influence Culture Part 2 on January 14th. So we have talked about putting God first in our heart, in our time, and our resources, and it is time to wrap this up. So what final thoughts would you like to share?
So today I want to challenge each person that probably listened to this message, that make the year 2024 a year where you put God first in those areas. you put God first in your life. Give him 1 year and test him. And then just put him first in your heart, in your time, in your resources, and just give him 1 year. But jump in with both feet, not this kind of like, yeah, I'm gonna kind of try what God is doing and maybe go once a year to church. I'm talking about jump in what God has for you with both feet. Give him 1 year of your life, and then I know you'll be amazed at the end of 2024 to see how God really blessed you. If at the end of 2024 you feel like he let you down, or you don't feel that, didn't work, you could always go back to old ways or the way you used to do it.
You always now.
But I really want to challenge you. Jump in what God has for you, to be able to experience the blessings that he wants to release in your life, and make 2024 a year that I'm going to give God a try. And I'm going to jump in with everything. Actually, I would like to just maybe end right here the message with a prayer. Because I do believe some of you try different ways for months, years, and it's not working. And maybe this is a challenge that you want to embrace, that, okay, I'm going to try it. I'm going to jump in. I'm going to accept God. I'm going to commit to God in my time, in my resources. He's going to be number one in my heart. And then looking forward to see what God is going to do in your life. So, Heavenly Father, we are so thankful for this year 2023, for the ups and downs, for the gains and losses, for the joy that you bring us through 2023, but also some of the sadness that you brought us through 2023. We are asking for you to just help us, looking forward to 2024, to give you, to make you number one in our hearts, with our time and in our resources. We are dedicating, we are trying, we are committing 2024 to you, because we know what you have in store is going to be able to be released to us. So help us, empower us to align our vision with your vision, to be able to fulfill your plan for us individual, but also for our friends, for our neighbors, for our families, for our kids, and for everyone around us where you placed us to be. So I'm asking for your blessings. I'm asking for your protection. I'm asking for you to be our Lord and Savior from now and forever. If you said that prayer, please let us know, because we want to walk with you. We want to be intentional. We will help you to be able to experience more of God in your life.
So one of the ways that we're very intentional with putting first things first is in our annual 21 Days of Prayer, which will be starting on January 7th. So every January, we call the church to these 21 days of drawing close to God through prayer and fasting. And we'll be starting that 21 days next Sunday, January 7th, and going until January 28th. And we want to encourage every person at Influence Church to participate in this. So don't just put your toes in, like he was saying, but jump in and just see what God does. So here are some ways that you can participate in our 21 Days of Prayer. We're going to be, one of the ways is to spend time each day with the Lord. Whether you already are in the habit or this is something new to you, we just want you to spend time with the Lord. And one of the ways we can help with that is we do a Bible reading plan on the YouVersion app together as a church. So we'll be putting out links to everything and more information, but just plan to join that reading plan. We have a couple opportunities for corporate prayer and worship. Every Tuesday night, we have prayer on Zoom.
Yes.
It's our longest running small group. We started from the beginning.
Yes, from the beginning. And just few Tuesdays that we didn't meet for whatever reason, but being the longest group ever.
So Tuesday nights, 6:45 to 7:30 on Zoom. And I just encourage you, jump in for January. jump in for I think I found a theme.
I see another t-shirt coming.
Jump in for January. So Tuesday night prayer, and also Sunday mornings at 9:20, before the 10 o'clock service, at 9:20, we gather as all the team for that day, and anyone else is invited to come. And we have a time of worship and prayer before the service starts. And that is some of my favorite moments of Sundays, is that team huddle prayer time. And you are invited to that 7:20 Sunday mornings. And so jump into that for January. And then finally, we just encourage you to do some type of fasting. Fasting is like adding that extra shot of espresso to your prayer, right? So
Or
prayer,
Pepsi.
Or
and
Pepsi. Although you might not be drinking Pepsi for January, or caffeine. Whew. Anyhow, so when we say like, okay, our body is longing for this, and we say, no, I'm not going to give my body what it wants. Instead, I'm going to press into the Lord. Like, something happens. I don't know if I'm explaining this right. But anyhow, there's lots of different ways to fast, from a full fast to maybe you want to fast social media for those 3 weeks. That would not be a bad thing. Or video games.
Or skip a meal.
Or skip a meal and take that time that you would have prepared or eaten the meal to be with the Lord. And actually, I'm going to try something new this time, because we're starting a series on the book of Daniel in January. And so I have been researching the Daniel fast. It's a thing. And I'm going to try it for that 21 days. And I'm going to invite anyone else who wants to just, like, I don't know. I'm just going to try it. But anyone who wants to join me, I'm going to do a little online small group for the Daniel fast. So find information on all this at Influence.Church and on Church Center. And we'll be talking about this starting next Sunday.
I think this can be a great opportunity to start the year right and putting God first. And this 21 days of prayer and fasting can be a great tool to help us lean more on God than on our strength and gifts. Thank you for joining us for this podcast episode. We hope to see you at our Dream Team Party this Friday night at Sound House, January. And remember, January 7, we are starting our 21 days of prayer, and the new series, messages but from Book of Daniel. Yeah. Thank you for watching us, and hope to see you at the party Friday, if not Sunday in church. Have a blessed year.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.